Okay, I'm back.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. Yeah, he says there are two different things, not two different suggestions on what to try, not the same. Like
Yeah.
you don't do both, I guess.
I have fought with this on WebEx, and but let me just
Okay.
so
We
if I
have
go
5 minutes. You're good. You're 6
yeah
minutes.
no I'm good. So if I say oh, change presenter, no, that's not it. I don't want to cancel. I don't want to do that. I want to say, oh, okay, all right, let's try this. So if I do this, and then I say, so you're seeing the wrong one, but I can't get my mouse doesn't come back in Keynote, which is stupid.
Maybe
So I'm just,
it's as
if I say,
intended, but
if I do the whole screen, and now we do it, now
that
you just
is
have that.
perfect. Yes.
That works for me.
Yay.
Yeah,
Excellent. So we've
yeah,
got 5
yeah.
minutes to spare.
Cool. I could should I just leave it here, or
Yeah,
that
yeah,
would,
let's just leave
okay.
it alone and we'll get
All right.
started promptly at 11:30. So grab some water, take a break.
Yep.
Yay, thanks for all the help.
Yep.
We got it. Excellent. Whew. Okay, I'm gonna go take a break myself. I'll be back in a couple minutes.
I'm here. I can
Oh,
babysit.
excellent. Okay. Mark?
Yes.
Are we still good with the slides the way they are right now? Can you see the right
Yes.
stuff? Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's telling me that the session is being recorded, but I can't stop recording, so I don't know who started recording, but we probably need to stop it and restart it.
Yep. I don't see the record control.
Oh, did that somehow end up with me?
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't, but it might have. So if you look under the sharing tab, do you have a sharing tab?
Yeah, I do. It says stop.
Is it grayed out or can you stop it?
It says,
Yeah. Available only for presenter when showing screen. So we need Mitch to go ahead and stop it.
I have stopped showing screen.
There should be a button underneath it that says stop recording.
No, I don't
It's a
see
very
one.
Well, I see that one. Let me try it. Are you starting it? Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Next up on our agenda is our technology update, the one to introduce Mitch Lichtenberg. He's one of our longtime volunteers and has been a great resource for all the teams in the area at the events that he's at. So thank you, Mitch, for taking the time to pull this together. Take it away, Mitch.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you for inviting me, and welcome to the new season, everybody. It's going to be a different and exciting one this time, but I think that you'll find at the end of this presentation that the new technology being introduced should actually help us with our remote events, because it eliminates a lot of the problems that I've encountered over the years, and you've seen in at tournaments. You know what we're talking about when we talk about what has changed. So the objectives today are up front here. I'm going to give you a brief summary of the new control system. Some of that was talked about in the Twitch stream and it's been mentioned before, but I'll go into some details about that. I'll tell you what's new, what's been removed, and what has changed. This presentation has a bunch of online resources to get you started, and I assume that we will put these slides up somewhere because I listed some QR codes in there for people to access some online websites. And then how you can get your own new technology components via your team's dashboard. So it's not just through the Rev Store. There's other ways to get some of the new technology components for your robot. The big thing is there's some exciting new changes this year, and very exciting for us people who have to deal with the same technology problems every year. We have lots of new solutions, which I think that you'll find really, really, really help. So as a quick recap though, let's go back and look at the way the old control systems used to work. Back in 2015, the new system was the modern robotic stuff, and anybody that has had to deal with this over the years remembers lots and lots of modules and lots of USB cables and Android phones as robot controllers. And it was exciting and fun, and there were just so many USB cables. Quickly, they realized that USB cables aren't a great thing, and when the Rev Expansion Hub came out in 2017, shrunk everything down. Now there's one module with support for up to 4 motors and sensor ports, and there's still an Android phone for the robot controller, and so there's still one USB cable left. So you can see where the trend is going. So first thing that's new, modern robotic stuff is gone. It is no longer legal. If you have modern robotic stuff, to set it aside, put it in the museum, and maybe you can use it for off-season stuff, or just if you need to mess with a motor. But for the most part, the modern robotic system is not legal. There's a couple of small components that, if you have any MR sensors, they're still good. I'll talk about those later. But I think that it's time for this to be retired. So if that's true, what could possibly be new? Well, the new thing is, as you've already been told, is the new control hub. This is your new robot controller. It includes what used to be in your Android phone, and it's also everything that was in the expansion hub, all in one unit. So the Android device is now inside the control hub. You may have wondered for the years why they call it an expansion hub. What was it expanding? Well, this is it. So The big new feature of it is the Android device now is built in. It runs a special stripped down version of the Android OS that's maintained by the FTC software people. It will have the nice benefit that it won't, in the middle of a tournament, decide that it wants to connect to Verizon or T-Mobile. It will not automatically install an update that makes it incompatible with the previous one. It won't, insist that you log into Google or anything like that, because the only program that lives on it is your robot. It boots really quickly because there's no other software that needs to boot up. It is a fast 64-bit CPU. It runs off your regular robot battery. How many times have we been in a tournament where there's 5% left on your robot controller because it has a built-in battery that you can't remove, and it complains that your robot battery is dying with a dialogue in the middle of a match? Not happening anymore. If your robot battery is good, your robot controller battery is good. And the best thing of all is no more USB cables. Those of you who have been at tournaments where I've been an FTA have noticed that I always have a pocket full of these cables that I hand to teams as soon as I notice a USB problem. I'm hoping that this is the end of it. No more USB problems, but certainly between the Android device and the robot control and the expansion hub, because there is no Android device to expansion hub connection that's external. It's all built in. The control hub's got a few extra connectors on it. That's one way you can tell the difference. There's a whole bunch of connectors on the back. Only a couple of them really matter. The USB-C connector is there for downloading your programs. There's a cable that comes in the control hub kit that lets you plug this into your computer. I will say, if you're a Mac user, don't try to use one of the USB charging cables that you would think, because it has USB-C on both ends. I have not been able to get this to work, so we'll figure that out, and we can provide information for that later. But just use the orange cable that came in the kit and plug it into your Mac or your Windows machine, and you can download programs from Android Studio with this. There's a USB 2 connector there that you can use to plug in your camera. It's likely the USB 3 connector will work as well, but most of the online guides and information that I've read so far suggest that you use the USB 2 connector for your camera. The other connectors are not used. The mini USB, don't use it. The HDMI, you might say, well, wait, what's an HDMI port for? Yeah, you can plug a screen in there and see what it shows. Don't. There's no reason to put a screen on your robot. It's probably not legal anyway. So the only connectors you really ought to care about is that USB-C connector and the USB 2.0 connector. Otherwise, they are exactly like an expansion hub. So what do you do with all your expansion hubs? Keep them, of course. Most robots have more than one of these things. We had 2 expansion hubs last year, and now you'll have a control hub plus an expansion hub on your robot. And you use one of the same RS-485 cables that you've always used, and just connect them together. The only difference is that they look different. They've got different writing on the top, but the connections are all exactly the same. The control hub is considered the primary one, and the expansion hub is secondary. So all the connections, all the setup that you'll do through the control hub to the expansion hub will start with the control hub. Think of it as the same one that used to directly connect to your Android device, because it still is technically, it's just inside now. When you buy a control hub, it'll come in a box and it has some other pieces in it. Generally speaking, at least for me, for the control hubs that I've played with, the firmware that comes on it isn't necessarily the most up-to-date. So you should learn how to update the OS and the firmware on your hubs. It is expected that OS updates won't happen very often. Firmware updates won't happen very often, just like in the past, but it's very likely that you will have to do an update at least sometime during the season. And remember, field inspection does require that you run specific versions of the OS and the firmware on your control hubs and your expansion hubs to have a valid field inspection. Just yesterday, Rev introduced a Windows tool to help automate the setup of your control hubs, helping you do things like OS upgrades, install a robot controller, change the firmware. I have not downloaded or tested this tool yet, but you can do everything with just a web browser, and that's a perfectly reasonable and simple way to do it. This particular program only runs under Windows, so if you want to use Mac or something else, then you should use the web browser setup anyway. But the Rev tool probably will provide better diagnostics in the future if something goes wrong with your control hub. There's a couple of other little things you need to remember to do. You need to name your robot controller just like you had to name your phone in the past. Since the Android device is inside, it still has to be named. And you need to change the default password to the robot controller. Robot controllers do have passwords now, and I will discuss that a little bit when we go over the Wi-Fi changes that the Control Hub introduces. You don't have to scan all these right now. I'm assuming we're going to put this up online, but there's a number of really good online resources to deal with, to teach you about the Control Hub and the new features of it and how to hook it up and how to manage the software on it. Two good places are Rev's own documentation on Rev Robotics website. The other place is in the wiki on GitHub, which is where you would find the software development kit. There's a whole wiki there that talks about the Control Hub and how to set it up and use it. And of course, finally, you'll need a new copy of the software development kit. As of today, right now, it is still in the repository that's called Skystone. I do not know if they're planning to move it. It was being modified as of yesterday, so I'm assuming that it is still where they're doing most of their active development. But keep an eye out if the SDK location changes. And take it from there if they do move it. Hopefully they'll leave a link in the old repository to tell you to go to the new repository like they did last time. So definitely keep up on the software. It probably will move quickly at the beginning of the season like it typically does, and then slow down as the build kind of comes to a close and people start competing. So with the new Control Hub, Wi-Fi has changed a little bit. I don't know how many people have been frustrated with Wi-Fi Direct and Wi-Fi Direct groups and accepting invitations and all those things that two phones used to have. That's kind of gone now. With a Control Hub, each Control Hub creates its own unique Wi-Fi network, just like the access point in your house or a coffee shop or anywhere else. It makes its own Wi-Fi network, and the Wi-Fi network's name will be your robot name. And the initial setup is done by a web browser or the client application. You turn on your robot, it has a default name, you connect to it over the web, you can change its name and change its password, and then your Control Hub is now its own access point that you can use to talk to it from the driver station or from your laptop if you want to program it. The one thing you've got to remember to do if you have when you have the new driver station installed is that driver stations don't immediately know whether they're talking to Wi-Fi Direct or Control Hub. So there's a setting in the triple dot menu in the upper right-hand corner of the driver station to switch your driver station's mode to Control Hub. Once you do that, it will connect to the Control Hub just as it used to connect to your old robot, your Android phone-based robot controller. And I think you'll find that the driver station is much improved from the past. There's a lot of, it's very good at reconnecting. It's very good at remembering joysticks and things like that compared to past years. So all really good stuff going on for the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is much more reliable than it has been in the past. Because Wi-Fi is more reliable now, you might consider using the other methods we have for doing programming of your robot. If you're a new team or you've always wondered about this or want a simpler way of programming your robot and don't really want to fight too much with Android Studio. So this stuff has always been part of the robot controller in the past. It's just been a little harder to get to because of the difficulties of getting into Wi-Fi Direct groups. You can now just point your web browser at your robot, and in your web browser, you can write programs in two different ways. There's a kind of graphical language called blocks, and there's an on-robot Java compiler. In fact, the blocks environment generates Java, and you can use the blocks to generate a sample Java program that then you can modify later. It's a great way of seeing the relationship between the graphical version of a program and what it actually looks like inside when you write it in a traditional programming language. In the past, I've noticed most teams seem to be using Android Studio, especially older teams that have been with us since the very beginning. That's all still there, of course. Android Studio is still there. You can still download the programs using the USB cable, or if you remember how to, you can set up wireless ADB for deployment as well, using the same methods that have worked in the past. So it's there are 3 different ways of programming. They're all quite good, and the on-robot Java might actually be a great option for teams in remote use, because it requires just one computer and the control hub, and that the control hub remembers all the programs that have been put into it. So now that your robot doesn't have a screen anymore, how do you program it? How do you name your motors and sensors? Well, you've always been able to do this for the past few years, and many teams do, but maybe many did not notice that you can actually configure the robot from the driver station itself. It looks just like the configuration screens that used to be on the robot controller on your robot, but it's just on your driver station now. So you can go in there and name your motors and sensors and do all the things that you used to be able to do directly on the robot controller screen, but you do it from the driver station. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that just like as before, the configuration is still stored in the control hub. So even though you're using your driver station to program it, the names of all those sensors is stored in the control hub the way it always has been. It's been stored in the robot controller, but you can edit it from any driver station. It's pretty convenient, and really it underscores the fact that we really don't need to have a screen on the robot controller anymore. You can do everything from the driver station now. However, phones are still a thing, and they're still a thing because you still need them for your driver station, and they're still a thing because maybe you like the camera integration, or you like to use your phone, or it works better for the way the team's workflow is. However, the list of legal phones has been changed for this year, and you can see the rules I've highlighted above for that. The Motorola phones are listed here are the only legal phones this year, and in particular, the Samsung, Google, and ZTE phones are gone. They're not listed available in the rules anymore, and this same rule applies to the driver station devices. One good reason why they are doing this is to have the kind of the same version of Android running across all of the various platforms we care about, such that we don't have to worry about weird problems that only show up with one version of Android or another. It helps the people working on the FTC software produce a consistent and easy to use system that behaves the same way on all devices. So if you've got Motorola phones, those are your new driver stations. So how do you hook up a camera? There's no camera if you don't have a phone. So I mentioned before that cameras get plugged into one of the USB ports on the control hub. In particular, you need to have cameras that are UVC compatible. UVC is a USB camera interface standard. Many webcams are UVC compatible. This particular camera is in Rev's catalog, and their the FTC SDK people do use Logitech cameras for their testing. This particular one is out of stock right now, but I think that there are plenty of good UVC options to use. Many other devices do exist. Don't necessarily go to get your 4K super high res camera. It's not necessary for this. It may actually slow down your robot controller a little bit. So pick a camera that works well, gives you the field of view you want, and is easy to mount on your robot, and it's easy to test. There's some great simple camera viewfinder applications that are part of the driver station. Once you instantiate the camera, once you plug it in and configure it, you can check it out and try it without having to write very much code. Kind of bringing it up to a summary, here's a list of the changes. We have a new control hub that combines the Android device and the expansion hub. It's highly recommended. If you haven't thought about getting a control hub, I definitely recommend it. I think it will make the season a lot easier. It will eliminate a lot of the problems that FTAs typically notice during matches. Much more reliable. Most modern robotics control system parts are now illegal. See rule 8 and 9. Only the color sensor, your battery, and the DC motors labeled matrix and I think these are the matrix batteries as well, are still legal. So if you have your old DC motors, those are still the same, but double check the rules. If you still use a phone as your robot controller, double check that you have a version that's supported. And there's a new software development kit, including a new driver station application. You'll need both of these to operate the control hub, and you'll need both of them anyway to get through field inspection. So definitely update early, We've seen too many teams come in with last year's control system, last year's SDKs on their robots, and have had to update them at a tournament. This is a great opportunity to go and download that stuff and get familiar with the new SDK. There are a bunch of robot rules that talk about the new control system, and here's a list of the ones that I was able to find. The list of Android devices is at this rule. How many control hubs and modules that you can use is in Rule 8. Which cameras are allowed is Rule 14, and Rules 1 through 9 for RS1 through 9 is all the software-related rules. And there's a lot of rules there, but they're actually pretty reasonable and simple. And so read through them and essentially download the SDK, use the control hub, don't use an illegal phone, and you're all good to go. Finally, you might say, well, wait, how can I go get one of these control hubs? I don't have one yet. The best way to get a control hub is via the storefront on your team's dashboard. Now, this is only visible to the lead coach for the team. Only a couple of people on each team typically can see the team's storefront, but it is the place to pick up a control hub. You get the best discounts, and if you have any grant money from any of the area companies who have generously donated to your teams, this is a great way to use the grant money without having to have it re-granted or sent back to you. So definitely take advantage of this. Use the storefront to order your control hubs, and order it through the first dashboard, and that's the best way to get it. Finally, although especially for you FRC people who are trying out FTC this year, there's FIRST actually has a forum that's run by FIRST about the FIRST Tech Challenge. And in addition to things like official game rule clarifications, there's places for teams to share information about their robots, also ask questions about technology and software, and other FTC related things. This is this particular forum it's not really like Chief Delphi. It's more official than that. But if you're a new team and you haven't been aware of the presence of this is the place you go to get new technology information and game and rules clarifications. So Mark will probably go over that, the official process for doing rules update when he talks about the game later. From my point of view, you can see right there on the page, the technology and the control hub forums are right there for talking about changes that the ways that the control hub is changing the way you play the game, or the way that you interact with the technology. It's a good resource. And also us as the mentor network, as the FTA Q&As and forums start to come up, I and others will be available to help you if you have control hub questions. So that's all I have in my presentation. I think there's time for a couple. I don't know how the questions and answers are going to work, but
we have a couple queued up, Mitch, so let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready. Go for it.
Okay, I think you addressed this, but it came early, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyway. Just so, which software programs support wireless download to the control hub? So is it everything except Android Studio? You have to have that special cable. Is that correct?
No. So just as in the past, where you've been able to do downloads over your phone with setting up a wireless ADB connection, you can do the same thing with this. If you think about it, this is really no different from having a phone packed inside that box. So everything you used to be able to do for wireless downloads still works now the same way. It's just in the past, I remember there's a couple of steps you have to do to set it up such that you can push the program wirelessly. You can still do that. The basic technology has not changed. So set up your wireless ADB and push code just as you have in the past. The reason for talking about the web browser method is that it is a lot more accessible now than it used to be, but all of these things are the same as before. They haven't changed. They're just a little easier to connect now. Your robot connects quicker. It keeps the same IP address all the time. It's much more approachable. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. And then just to follow on is security. Is there any security built into that connection?
So one of the rules says that you must change the password to your robot, And so because the robot controller now creates its own access point, it also creates an its own encrypted access point. So it's just like in your home Wi-Fi where you have a password to enable, I'm guessing it uses WPA2, which is the same, the personal privacy features that most Wi-Fi routers use. You must change the password from the default of password once you set up your robot control, your control hub, and you don't have to share this password with anybody except your team. With that, there is at least a reasonable amount of security. In the past, that same equivalent thing was done by the way Wi-Fi Direct shared passwords. It's the same type of security, although it's a little easier to understand. So you set the password in the web browser the first time you set up your control hub, and after that, it's a remembered SSID password, just like any access point would have.
Great, thank you for that. There's a comment around that AP mode on Control Hub is easier to manage than Wi-Fi Direct. I'm not sure. Yeah. I think Bob, that's just a statement. Yeah,
yes, that's a true statement. Yeah, AP mode is way easier. You turn your robot on, and it just then your phone and your laptop can just reconnect to it, and so it's a much smoother experience than it was in the past.
And AP stands for access point, is that right?
Yes. AP stands for access point, which is the word generally used to describe the thing that makes your Wi-Fi visible somewhere.
Yep.
It's your router or whatever, in your home would be an access point typically.
Okay. The next question is how are we able to use the Logitech game controllers? And I don't think there's any change on that side, right?
No, the Logitech game controllers are still the same, and maybe it's not clear that the driver station part is actually pretty much the same as it has been in the past. You still have a phone. It's still running the driver station application, which you can download from the Google Play Store. You still have one of those little mini USB to big USB cables or a small hub that you plug into your phone, and you attach your joysticks to that. So the one thing that didn't change much is the driver station. It is still pretty much the same as you remember it. What the new thing is, the driver station is used for more things because you need it to do the configuration of your robot. In the past, you could do it either way. Now you have to use it. But the driver station is pretty much looks exactly the same as it did in the past. It's got the same look. It's got the same functions. It's a lot more robust. If your joystick wiggles loose and comes back, you don't have to remember to press start and A the second time. Most of the time, it picks it right up again, which is a pretty cool feature.
That's good.
I think that people will be pleased this year that the driver station has gotten way better.
There's a question which may be beyond the scope of the time remaining, but how do you use or set up wireless ADB?
So I have not done that in the past couple of weeks to remember how, but typically what you do is you need to do something on your programming computer, whatever machine runs Android Studio, to stop and restart the ADB process onto the port number that is shared by ADB on the client. We can come up with a guide on how to do that and put it in. That would be a great thing for a quick tutorial video, for example. So I'll make a note to I'll make a note to make something like that. I found that the nice thing with the USB-C cable, it's a very robust thing. It's pretty quick to download, and the nice thing about it is that the cable, that connector is way better than the one that used to be on the phones. And you don't have to disconnect anything to use it. You can disconnect, you can just plug in there, jack in, plug the stuff in, and disconnect. So yeah, wireless is great, and you want to use that for debugging, but the cable method is, even that's improved now. So.
Great. And there was I put out a URL that Bob also recommends, a great resource for wireless programming. So
great.
People can
Excellent.
look in the Q&A on the app itself as well, the GoToWebinar app. Next question is just moving on. How many control hubs and expansion hubs can you use on your robot?
Okay, so the rules are, it's definitely called out in the rules. And if you use a phone, an old school way, then you have a phone and 2 expansion hubs maximum. And if you don't use a phone, if you're going to use the control hub, and I recommend you do, then you have 1 control hub and 1 expansion hub maximum. You can also, if you're able to do it in 4 motors, you can have just the control hub. But I suspect most teams will end up with 1 of each. So
Great.
that's 1 of each.
And does Rev work on Macs? Which I think, given you're a Mac guy and work at Apple, I think
yes.
the answer is yes.
Yeah, Android Studio on a Mac is awesome. I find it to be a very many Googlers use Macintoshes to write Android. So it's a pretty good environment to run Android Studio. The USB interface works really well. Except for that weirdness with the cable, which I'll figure out, but just use the cable that came with it. And the nice thing about that is, with the exception of Rev's Windows-based hardware setup program, which you don't need, but looks like it's very slick, you can really use either Windows or the Macintosh. Heck, you could even probably use Linux, because Linux works with Android Studio as well. So it's the way that FTC people have set this up, it's a very approachable programming environment. You can use pretty much any tool you got. So.
Great, thank you. Let's see, can you connect more than 1 camera?
I'm pretty certain the answer to that. Last year, I believe that was possible in the software. I think the rules do say that you can put a powered hub, or you can put a hub on your thing, or you can use both of the USB connectors to connect 2 cameras. There's nothing that says you can't. Like I said, the rules don't say you have to use the USB 2. You can, as long as the USB-C camera is attached. I would double check the rules for sure. And it may be an issue of software being able to select more than 1 camera. And that would be, I have not experimented with this year's version of Euphoria or TensorFlow yet. That's on my list of things to do. If the rules do not prohibit it, and I don't believe they do, then yes, you could put more than 1 camera on.
Great. Where can we find and update all of the different softwares you've mentioned? And I think you have a great, if you want to flip back to your one with all of the codes. Whoop, looks like we lost something.
No, I'm trying to, there we go. Which, you want the, this one.
Yeah. You have to reshare, I think.
I have to reshare?
Yeah,
Did I
so.
stop sharing?
Yep.
Oh goodness.
Sorry about that. Yep, we just lost the share. There it is. Yep.
Back.
This is an update to, this is an update to everybody. It may take us a day or so to be able to get all these materials up, but we will be putting them all up on the NorCal FTC website.
Right.
Exactly.
So
yes.
People can see this, and it should have 3 web links and 3 QR codes on it.
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
great.
So take a snap on this one. This is a great 1-pager for your software control hubs. Next question is, can we create, this is an interesting one, can we create a mesh network so that on our laptop we can do both accessing the control hub as well as access outside to the internet?
So during the match play, the rules will, I don't remember the rule number offhand, but you are not allowed to be connected to more than 1 network. So your driver station is connected to your robot controller, and that's it. And it's a good idea anyway, because the last thing you want to do is introduce any weird IP routing things that will add latency or disrupt the communication between your driver station and your robot. However, when you're programming your robot, you may want to be on you may want to connect your programming laptop if you're going to push wirelessly to your robot controller. I've just switched back and forth, but if you're able to be on both networks at home when you program, that's okay. I would think that the best thing for you to do, though, is to behave like you're being in a tournament, such that the robots network is the only network that you're on. The driver station only connects to the robots network. And then when you need to push a program wirelessly, just have your laptop be on the same network as your robot. And then when you're done, disconnect it before you play a match so that there will be no excess interference, no reason for your laptop to go and talk to the robot controller in the middle of a match. We used to have problems with that in the past. Best thing to do is to, even at home, think of it that way. That's the way I recommend doing it. It's tempting to go off and say, well, I can do all this remote things, I can tunnel stuff, and in general, anything that would cause you to modify the SDK is not going to be valid. So you can't do that. So best thing to do, think of it like you're at a tournament, like you're in your pits at a tournament, and your robot and your driver station are by themselves on the same network. And every now and then you beam in with your programming laptop to update software, and then you disconnect.
Great.
That will give you the best. That will give you the best performance and the best repeatability of your robot's performance on the field.
Otherwise, you have to switch networks, which is not a big deal, right?
It's not a big deal. The nice thing about it, since it's not Wi-Fi Direct anymore, you can just go onto the Wi-Fi menu of your laptop and just toggle back and forth between the two networks.
Yeah.
That's
what I would recommend as well.
Yeah, that's way easier than it used to be.
Yeah. So there's a great question. So given all of this, does that mean that personal hotspots, like at a tournament, we always have the announcements over and over again to turn off personal hotspots? Are those any more of an issue at this point?
Yes, I think they're going to be a worse issue. So the downside of having 60 plus news broadcasting robot system IDs will be even worse than Wi-Fi Direct, which was kind of like that, but at least it was sort of on its own. So I would absolutely assume that we're not going to be relaxing any rules about hotspots at in-person tournaments. Now, at your own home, we're not going to tell you to go and disconnect your home Wi-Fi to have a tournament, right? So the issue is not the presence of hotspots themselves. It's the presence of lots of hotspots. And,
right, it clutters the radio channel, right?
Right, and now every robot is a hotspot. And so you don't want to have even more of those. You don't want every team to bring two hotspots. One is their robot and one is their own hotspot to a tournament. So the rules: practice good Wi-Fi behavior and try to keep the channel as clean as possible so that you get the best performance out of your robot.
Great. The next question is the FTC repository on GitHub, do we know when that's going to be updated? I don't know, Mark, if you've heard anything.
It was
on
updated as of yesterday. I mean,
they're continuing. Okay.
Yeah. So the one that's labeled Skystone right now is where the active development is being pushed. However, I don't know. I'm certain that they will either say at some point that it's staying here, or they will create a new repository with this year's game as a way to just kind of freeze it. So that's why I said that I listed it as of today. I don't know how we would communicate out if they change it. I'm going to hope that the SDK people leave a forwarding note on the Skystone website and say, nope, this is not where you need to look. Go look over here now. But for the past some time, they've done all the development in the Skystone repository over the summer. So
great.
And I would expect that if they do move it, it'll be included. A note will be included in Team Blast. But I'm pretty sure that the updates they've done do include the season-specific pieces, right? So Ken Johnson mentioned a TensorFlow training that they did to be able to recognize the starter stacks. So I'm pretty sure that that's included in the current updates.
Yeah, it's a question of whether they decide to move it or not. And it would be silly to move it, but they might do it for naming reasons, just so that people don't get confused by the name. So.
Great. Well, that is all of the queued up questions. If I've missed your question or you need a secondary question, we have probably just a few minutes left. One of the things I do want to put a plug in, you'll see an email go out this week. There will be a free TensorFlow presentation on real life use cases, so not specific to FTC. This is a Googler whose day job is a developer advocate for TensorFlow at Google, and he has graciously agreed to do a presentation on 4 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday the 22nd. So block out your calendar, but you'll see an invite. It'll be a free invite where he is going to basically do, his name is Jason May, and he's going to do some really cool overviews of how TensorFlow is actually used for people in their day jobs. So if you are a TensorFlow person or interested to understand why TensorFlow is kind of a good idea to learn, he will hopefully give you some great things that people are using TensorFlow, sort of I call it TensorFlow in the wild, right? So very cool. I've seen the slides. It's going to be fun. Last question that came in: can TensorFlow work in any of the different programming models, or is it only in Java?
That's an excellent question, and remember, underneath everything is Java. And this is something I do not know for sure because I haven't worked with this year's TensorFlow. But when I was speaking to some other first people who are giving training on this year's control system to auditing a kind of a mentor training class that they're doing, they did mention that support will be added for TensorFlow to blocks. And if they do that, then it will also show up in onBot Java as well, because all blocks does is generate onBot Java. So it's not a very strong yes, but I'm certain that they will not. There will be a way of at least doing the basic Vuforia and TensorFlow things that you need for this year's challenge with all of the programming environments. The richness of the code you get to write changes with which environment you use. Certainly Android Studio will be the most flexible, and blocks will be the most simplified. So depending on your team's software skill levels and the kinds of things you'd like to do, I'm reasonably certain that the Vision frameworks will be available for all the programming environments.
Yeah, and Bob just posted a great link, which I shared in the Q&A on the GoToWebinar, a TensorFlow for blocks. So blocks was created by a Googler, and TensorFlow is also Google. So thankfully they got together and made sure that worked.
Yep.
Great. Well, Mitch, this was awesome. I learned a bunch myself. Hopefully teams did as well. As Mark mentioned, we will be posting the slides and this presentation. Huge thanks to Mitch, also with Bob France in the background, providing some great links and some additional context. Appreciate that. With that, we are at a break. We'll come back at 12:30 in the same bat channel. Everything's the same. With the judging update. So we'll have a quick break. I'm going to drop the webinar, what I did before, and come back pretty quickly so that people can join, but we will get started at 12:30. Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you, Mitch.
No problem at all. My pleasure. And I'll be available for any text or email questions people have. I can answer things later if there's anything that comes up during the later Q&A that I can help with. So
great, thanks. Okay, we'll see you everybody here in just a minute as I end and restart.